And you want to talk about being a pre-med, let's talk about being an admitted student. That imposter syndrome is an entirely different level. Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Steven Madsen. I'm an incoming first-year medical student. I'm a husband and a father of a 5-month-old baby. And I started this channel to vlog my experience balancing parenthood with medical school. So subscribe if you'd like to follow along with my journey. See me juggling studying parenthood, crying babies at night, all the things. I don't know how it's gonna go. It might be a train wreck, but I guess we'll find out together. For those of you who've watched my Come to Work With Me videos, thank you so much. That really helps to grow my channel. And if you haven't watched them yet, I'll put a link right here to watch those. They're good. They show you the life of a CNA, kind of what we do. They're not my greatest editing work yet. As you can tell, I'm slowly getting more up to speed on how to edit videos. I'm a total noob. Kind of part of joining a new channel like me is that you get to see me slowly improve in the editing process. So hopefully that's fun for you to watch. Maybe it's a little cringy at the beginning. I don't know. If you're seeing this like a year later and scrolling back to watch this video, hopefully you'll notice that I've gotten better. If not, I'm sorry. Today's video is going to be a little bit different though, because I wanted to talk about how I got into medical school. So my story is a little bit different, but at the same time it's kind of the same as everybody else's. I went to a 4-year college. I got a degree in biology, which is pretty mainstream for pre-med. The reason I got a degree in biology is because the courses that it has you take as part of the degree perfectly times your knowledge to be primed right before you take the MCAT. Right around junior year of college is when most people take the MCAT, and during that time you're taking organic chemistry, biochemistry, some statistics and physics, and those are big things that are on the MCAT. And so I actually waited until the start of my senior year to take the MCAT. It was kind of a crappy decision actually, because I ended up having to do 2 weeks of the new semester and then take the MCAT. So my first midterms, I bombed 3 of them, but it was okay. I recovered, and in the end it didn't matter that much anyways, because my GPA had already been mostly set by senior year. And so I took the MCAT, felt just as lost as you can imagine. Kind of the point of the MCAT is to try to study so you feel less lost, but you're never gonna feel completely out of the woods. That's kind of just how it goes. And so I took the MCAT, super nervous, thought I bombed it, and I got a 511, which, you know, not amazing, but definitely good enough to get into medical school. And so senior year came and went. I battled with really bad senioritis because I knew that at that point my grades were pretty much set. And so it came time to apply for medical school, and I really had to take kind of a step back and think about whether I wanted to take a gap year, because I was married at the time, and I still am obviously, but my wife and I were planning to have kids soon. And so we decided that we didn't want to wait until medical school was well underway to have our first kid, just because having your first baby at the same time as you're in medical school is an entirely different animal than already having a kid by the time you start. But we had our first son during what became my gap year, and I applied this application cycle, and fortunately I got in. Now, I'm definitely outside the norm for med school applications, because normally you're supposed to apply in June, in July, sometime in early summer to have the best chance of school seeing you. But I actually applied at the end of October. And the reason for that was because I was going to do podiatry, and that was my plan all throughout college. But I started working as an endoscopy tech during my senior year. And if you don't know what that is, basically you spend 40 hours a week within a foot of a gastroenterologist doing colonoscopies, doing EGDs, every procedure that they do in their profession. And as part of being in the procedure room, I got to see what the GI doctor did. I got to see what anesthesiologists did. And occasionally I was on call and got to even come in and see what general surgeons did. And so I kind of had like a quarter life crisis where I realized that maybe I didn't want to shut the door to every specialty but podiatry, because if you don't know, podiatry is its own school separate from medical school. You have 100% match placement in podiatry, but that's literally the only way that you can go. And don't get me wrong, I think podiatry is a wonderful profession. I just doubted my own ability to be happy with just choosing that one thing. And so, long story short, I applied really late for medical school. Honestly, I didn't really expect to get in. I just wanted to pull the trigger because why not? So I applied to a few schools and thank goodness I got some interviews. Like I said, I'm not exactly a non-traditional applicant, but it did stand out, I think, to quite a few schools that I already had started a family. So that kind of lumped me in with the non-traditional students. And the school that I ended up getting admitted to, which is Toro University, Nevada, they really liked that I had a family and that I was willing to settle down in Nevada because I'm actually from Nevada. And so for me, it was almost a no-brainer to go there because it let me go back to my hometown and I wouldn't mind practicing there at all. So applied in October, got an interview invitation in December, and then January is when I went down and interviewed. Now that wasn't my only interview, but it definitely was the one that impressed me the most. And so at the end of the day, when I got my acceptance, it was a really easy decision for me. Now I'll do a whole separate video some other time talking about the interview itself, because I think that there's a lot of tips and tricks that can be pulled from my experience. But I do want to talk about a couple more things that made my application in particular stand out. First of all, I've worked as a CNA for 5 years, and that amounts to a lot of clinical experience hours. It amounts to a lot of bedside manner practice, a lot of flexibility in practicing healthcare. You practice a lot of HIPAA regulations, right? There's things that you can't say, and there's lots of opportunities to say things to people that you're not supposed to. So you kind of have to learn to bite your tongue with healthcare information. And while it's not the most glamorous job, I think that a lot of medical schools definitely recognize it as being a really good learning experience. And so I started being a CNA as a freshman in college, and my plan was to do it for 6 months or so, see if I liked it, and then maybe to quit, because at that point I would have quite a few clinical hours. But the longer I stayed, the more I fell in love with caring for the residents. And so before I knew it, it had been 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and now I'm coming up on my 5th year still working here. And like I said, I also work as an endoscopy tech, and so I definitely have more variety. But being a CNA in itself does offer quite a bit of variety. And so it's a really good thing to look into if you're still looking for clinical exposure hours. Another thing was service. So as part of my church and the church that I grew up in, when we're 18 years old, we have the option to go on a 2-year-long service mission where you teach about the church, obviously, but you get to do a lot of humanitarian service as well. And so for me, I got to go to the islands of Fiji, which were beautiful, stunning, amazing, but we did a lot of hard work while I was there. And also as part of that, I got to see a lot of healthcare disparities, because Fiji has decent healthcare, but it's about 70 years behind the United States. And so you walk around their hospitals and it's kind of scary sometimes. And I think that medical schools in my interview really appreciated that I had an appreciation for modern medicine and the good that it can do if you take it to underserved communities. So that was a pretty big X factor for me, because you know, when you get into the nitty gritty, it does add up to like 19,000 service hours. So that is a lot. And schools don't expect you to have 19,000. As long as there's a definite passion behind what you're doing for service, you're gonna get just as much credit. Service, as well as the X factor that I had with having a family and the application cycle in general. And the next part is research, because a lot of institutions care that you at least have some research experience. It's kind of like shadowing, where they don't necessarily want you to be a professional. They just want you to know what you do and don't like. And so like with shadowing, they want you to know that you can follow a physician, you know what they do, and you still want to go down that path, because it's a really long road once you get into medical school. And research is kind of the same, because there are some people that will do research just to kind of check the box, and half of them will just absolutely hate it, and another half will really like it. And so there's a lot of learning that can be done by just engaging in base level research. to kind of show you if you like academic medicine, if you want to do a MD, PhD, if you want to do a lot of research to get a really competitive specialty. It's just all about the experience and learning whether or not you like it. And so for me, research was kind of something that I did over the duration of my undergrad. I wasn't super passionate about any specific projects that were being offered, which, by the way, a really good way to get research is to become really well acquainted with your professors. And then you can email and ask them or talk to them in class and see what they're up to in their research labs, because if you don't know, pretty much all professors that are employed by universities are there as researchers as well as teachers. And there's kind of a sliding scale of how much research versus teaching they do, but almost all of the faculty that are professors are required to engage in at least some research for the university. And a lot of them are just looking for great students who are passionate, who are smart, and who are driven to drive their research projects, because it makes it a lot easier for them. And so I personally got pretty lucky because my family's really good friends with a professor at the university I attended, and he actually does research in a greenhouse lab. And what they're doing is they're funded by NASA to make like dwarf versions of plants to eventually send to space. And it's really cool. It gets into baseline evolution and genetics, and I can tell that some people can do this for a career. There was definitely people that were doing their PhD in that lab and just absolutely loved it. Me as a person, I wasn't super big into the research just because it was so far out of my field of interest, but I worked there for a summer as kind of a lab tech and got to see a lot of the grunt work that's required in research. And honestly, it kind of put me off research for the next 2 or 3 years because I didn't resume doing research until senior year. And that doesn't go to say that I didn't like the research itself, I just wasn't super interested in it. And so senior year, I got with a buddy of mine who is also a pre-med, and he helped encourage us to get into what's called a ERCO grant, which your institution might have kind of a similar program for. It stands for Undergraduate Research and Creative Opportunities Grant. So basically you write a grant proposal, you write a research plan, and they have the opportunity to fund a set amount of these research projects to completely run through their own data, to collect things in the field, and to present, all based off funding that they give you as part of this grant. And so it was a great opportunity, and I could see the value in writing that sort of grant, in putting together my own project. And so I went for it, and that's what I've been doing for the past year or so now. And if anything, I think it's kind of shown me that I don't want to do academic medicine, or at least research medicine, because while it's been fun and a great experience, it's definitely highlighted to me that I prefer to not do a ton of research. And maybe once I get into medical research, it'll kind of click more with me, but that's exactly why they want you to do research, right? It's because it lets you know beforehand what direction you want to go once you're in medical school. And so regardless of the hours that you spend researching, if you can talk in your interview about why you did research, what you learned from it, whether or not you want to continue doing research as a result of that, they're gonna love that. They're gonna see the value in your character, and they're gonna see that you have wholeheartely learned the lesson that they wanted you to learn from research, whether that's a yes or a no to continuing research in the future. And so now we've talked about course load, grades, MCAT, research, service, X factors, applications, and all of this leads to you and what you should do to get into medical school yourself. And honestly, if there's one thing that I want to stress so much from my experience, it's that you can live your life as normal and still get the pre-med checklist done. And what I mean by that is I just went through a degree as normal, a biology degree, and that checked off all the courses that you need to apply. It sharpened my knowledge to be ready right before the MCAT. It led to the natural progression of taking the MCAT. I needed money to live in college, and so I just got a long-term job as a CNA, and that, as a result, got me thousands and thousands of clinical hours and patient exposure hours, taught me a lot, And I didn't necessarily go out of my way to do that because it was just part of earning a paycheck for me. Service was something that was a little bit more nuanced because of my church and the opportunity that's there. But I just did exactly what most people my age do in my church, and that got me tons of service hours, and it really taught me a passion for taking healthcare to underserved communities. I got a job as an endoscopy tech, and as a result got to shadow tons of different specialties, got to see what I like, what I don't like, and ultimately got out of my pre-podiatry path, which I guess we'll see whether that was a good decision or not. But it was all kind of a natural progression through life as an undergraduate. And at the end of the day, I was very prepared for applications because I just wrote on there the things I had done during my life. And so I guess that lesson is a bit more geared towards younger pre-meds that are a little bit earlier on in their college experience, just to structure your life so that you include being a pre-med in the things you need to do anyways, like work, research, courses, set yourself up for the MCAT. These are all things that you need to do anyways, and so you can really shape them to rack up hours, rack up experiences, lessons as you go through school anyways. And for those of you who are later on in the pre-med cycle, or maybe you're even applying, just remember to talk in your application about the things you learned in your experiences, because I know that there's a box to enter how many hours you did certain things, but the reality is that they care more than anything about what you learned from those experiences. And yes, a quantitative number of hours gets you into an interview, but it's what you learned during those experiences that will get you into medical school. And so for me, looking back, it's amazing now how much I've accomplished over the past few years, because it kind of just felt like I was doing normal stuff and earning a paycheck, going to school, doing homework, things you do in college anyways. But by the time I applied, it was like, holy cow, I've done all these things to prepare myself for medical school, and I really do deserve this acceptance. Which, that's a really hard place to get to mentally, because imposter syndrome, if you don't know, is totally real in being a pre-med. And you want to talk about being a pre-med, let's talk about being an admitted student. That imposter syndrome is an entirely different level. But in summary, don't necessarily focus on hours, don't go out of your way. Just structure being a pre-med as part of your life and focus on experiences and lessons that you learn. Don't necessarily focus as much on hours. Don't think of it as something that you need to get done. Just think of it as you becoming the type of person that wants to be a physician. Because as much as you can think as a college freshman that you know you want to be a physician, you won't know until you've been in healthcare for years, until you've had crappy shifts, until you've gone home late, until you've had someone die, until you've had all these crazy experiences that often scare a lot of people away. And if you can walk out the other side of that and still feel that this is your calling, then guess what? That's going to come across in the interviews that you have. And it's going to be very apparent, because those people are perceptive, right? They do hundreds of interviews per year. They graduate doctors, they see people go to residency, they know what makes a good physician. And that is not somebody who just did it for the checklist. But all right, guys, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for listening. That's gonna be all for me today. If you like this video, please hit that like button. If you wanna see more like this, tips, tricks, things that I've learned from my experience and just vlogging my life in general, click subscribe. I'll put a link here for one of my previous videos. Go ahead and watch that, become more acquainted with me. I'm gonna be doing a bigger about me video later. And I think my wife will join me on that too, which will be fun because you'll finally get to be introduced to her and maybe even to our baby. We're still kind of deciding on that. But anyways, thank you for watching. Continue to work hard. Do all the things that you need to do to get into medical school and learn if you want to be there. And if you learned anything from this video, comment down below. I want to hear what you found value in. But until next time.